All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Folks are filing in from the waiting room, and we are so excited to see you. We were just commenting that it feels like a long time since we've gathered together for a Siyyum, and that is because we are today celebrating the longest tractate of the entire Talmud. Actually, it was even longer because originally, as many of you know, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, and Bava Batra, which literally mean first gate, middle gate, last gate, were one super tractate called Nizikin, all of 411 pages. But in the Middle Ages, the scribes decided that was too much and divided them up. So if that had stayed that way, it would have been more than a year since we did the Siyyum with you. So we're really excited to see you all today in this context. And I can see we have just a couple people left in the waiting room. And then we can get started properly. So, okay. All right, welcome all to this Siyyum of Tractate Bava Batra. My name is Rachel Scheinerman. I edit My Jewish Learning and A Daily Dose of Talmud. And as those of you who've been with us for a long time know, the way we structure these Siyyums is that we invite three guests who are far more learned than I to come and teach a little something from the previous tractate as we celebrate the end of our learning together. And then we'll conclude by reading the final lines of the tractate together and saying the traditional blessings for completing a tractate. And as we go through, we love to hear from you. So let us know in the comments, what are you thinking about as you leave this tractate? What stood out to you? What are you struggling with? What are you loving? What are you remembering? Did it all go by in a blur? And you're really glad we're having a little chance to review. What are you looking forward to? Please let us know. Let us hear from you. You can also respond as our presenters present to what they are teaching, because they always have very engaging bits of learning for us as we do this program. Okay, so let me introduce them now. Today we are joined by Rabbanit Dasi Fruchter. Can you give us a wave there?
Hey everybody, Mazel Tov.
Rabbanit Fruchter is the spiritual leader of the South Philadelphia Shtibel. She teaches the popular Daf Yomi class in person. And if you don't live in Philadelphia, that's okay, because she also hosts the podcast Daf Yomi with Rabbanit Dasi Fruchter. Easy to find. We are also joined today by Rabbi Elliot Goldberg. Give us a wave.
Hi, everybody. Mazel Tov. Nice to see you.
Rabbi Goldberg is an executive coach and consultant with more than 2 decades of experience in Jewish day schools and a lifetime of summers at Camp Ramah. And you probably have him in your inbox pretty much every week writing on the daily daf. And we are also joined by Rabbi Asher Low-Patton.
Hey, everyone, Mazel Tov, and shout out to Michigan. A bunch of Michiganders on this.
Welcome, Rabbi Low-Patton, who is the rabbi and founder of Kilat Eitz Chaim and the director of community relations for the Greater Ann Arbor Jewish Federation. So we are just over now. I like to give the stats at the beginning before we are off and running. We are now just over 1,800 days into the Daf Yomi project, which means if you joined us at the beginning, you've done Chai times 100 pages of Talmud with us. If you haven't, that's totally fine, because they're ein mukdam, ein muchar. There's no beginning, there's no end. You can come along at any point in the ride. And if you decide to stick around, we're buckled in for just over 1,000 pages to go. Today is a special celebration because we're completing the third of the Bava tractates, Bava Batra, Bava Metzia, Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Batra, 411 dapim that form the foundation of Jewish civil law that we have spent over a year studying, and we are here to celebrate. When we arrange these Siyyums, I always invite the presenters to pick things that stood out to them from the tractate. You who are joining us, please also tell us what stood out to you. As it turned out, this panel was very focused on the 9th chapter, and they have all brought teachings from chapter 9 out of the 10 chapters in this tractate. So fairly recent material if you've been joining us. And apparently, to this set of minds, one of the richest parts of the tractate. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Rabbi Low-Patton, why don't you begin?
Hey, thank you so much, Rachel. And Good to hear people from everywhere, from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to Czech Republic, to local. Fantastic to have everyone here. Well, I was just so taken. I mean, the whole Masechet is just so meaningful and so logical and so really so practical for today's world, at least in thinking and in issues that we struggle with today. So, but on the ninth perek, the ninth chapter, the Mishnah starts there with Misha mate v'niach banim uvanot. So someone dies and they left boys and girls, and when there's a lot to inherit, then the men get they inherit, and the women get enough to support them to eat. But if there are very few, if there's not much to inherit, then we prioritize the women, and they get what to eat. And then Nebuch, Habanim yishalu al haftachim. If there's nothing left besides what there is to what the women, the daughters, get, then the men have to beg, and they're I don't want to use any, they get the bad lot of this. They don't get any of the inheritance, and so I love it because this looks so noblesse oblige, let's say, or we're so nice, we're so the women get this, and we care about the women, our tradition cares about the women so much. And Admon is I love it. I mean, it's just expressed so beautifully, and then we'll see the Gemara a little bit. But Admon says, Bishvil shani zachar hifsadati, just because I'm a man, do I have to lose out? And like, they will not replace us or something like that. Hey, come on, I'm a guy. It's not fair. We're politically too correct. What's going on? And, Rabban Gamliel says, you know what? Hey, ro'eh ani et divrei Admon. I see, hey, I like what Admon's saying. Yeah, the guys, we're going to miss out. We're going to lose out. Why should we lose out? So, what's also really interesting is, first of all, we don't pass and we don't rule that way. And the Tiferet Yisrael says it very clearly. The Gemara says later that, because of the Ketubah, this is the way things are going to be. In other words, we're not warm fuzzy here. The Ketubah is the agreement you go into, and that says that the daughters will be looked after. But the Gemara has really, I think, a really very relevant discussion. So first of all, I love the Gemara says, Mike Amar, like, huh? Admon? What are you talking about? Like, I'm a guy, so I should lose out. The Gemara, I would say, is a little bit, I don't want to say hostile, but it's not so impressed with Admon, and so it demands some kind of reasoning. So Abaye says, this is what he's saying, that since I am a man and Ra'oi lasok b'Torah, I have the Torah, I have a mitzvah of learning Torah, therefore, why should I lose out? The Gemara really wants to say there shouldn't be, you have nothing over women because you're a man, but okay, maybe Abaye says theoretically, I have this extra mitzvah of learning Torah, even though men and women, of course, can learn Torah, but this obligation. And Rava immediately challenges him and says, so you're saying that someone, man de asik b'Torah hu de yirit, de lo asik b'Torah lo yirit. By the way, so this is on Kuf Mem Amud Bet, on 140b. So Rava, and it's interesting, these are all people that are in the Torah class, the aristocracy. So Rava says, so you're saying that the fact that you can learn Torah or have an obligation to learn Torah, does that mean that you get preferential treatment? No. And he's assuming not. No. That doesn't make any sense. Just because you think that if you learn Torah, you inherit, and if you don't learn Torah, you don't inherit. That's the way things should be. And this is so fascinating that Rava is saying that you don't get any special privilege because you learn Torah. Now, you might get some more respect and sort of some superficial things, but tachlis, when it comes to the seriousness things, real things, you get no preferential treatment. And Tosfot there says there's a mitzvah to later on in 141a that yes, it's a mitzvah to support the daughters, and certainly the Gemara says the men who are learning Torah. So Tosfot, that commentary of Tosfot says Hainu inyan mitzvah. That's a nice thing. That's a mitzvah. That's, we say mitzvah is a commandment. Here it doesn't mean, it means a good deed, really. So Tosfot was saying that's a nice thing. Aval inyan dina, when it comes to the law, ein lachalek bein aske ba'oraita lelo aske. You make no differentiation between a person learning Torah versus not learning Torah. And look, I think that's really very relevant. We love Torah. Everyone learn Torah. Let's learn as much as we can. Rava certainly could not be attacked for someone who didn't like Torah. But when it comes down to it, you got to do your obligation. And if it means feeding the daughters, you have to feed the daughters. If it means doing whatever you're supposed to do, I don't want to get political as far as supporting the state or that kind of thing. But it's really interesting that there is a sense of mitzvah. The sense is so nice. You can learn Torah and we love you and it's so special and we'll try to help you out as much as possible. But when it comes to the deen, the law, you get no special privilege to that. And then the Gemara answers and says, that I normally get, the male says, I normally get to inherit. Why should I not get to inherit just because there's not a lot of inheritance? Well, you don't, because that's just the way the ketubah is written. And the ketubah is written to protect the wife and apparently also to protect the daughters. So it's really, you can make a lot of arguments. Is the Talmud feminist? Is it supporting women? But I just love the fact that the Talmud says, don't cut the male privilege or, the male victimhood, anything like that. Let's talk tachlis. Let's talk what do you have, what rights do you have, what rights don't you have. We love Torah, learn Torah as much as possible, but you got to follow the letter of the law as well. So there's a lot more to say about this. And then the next, the Mishnah that talks about tumtum, people that don't fit the category of male or female and their challenges, really, that brings up a whole other subject of how our society deals with other people that really don't fit neat categories. So there is a lot here and a lot to unpack. And I love that this beautiful tractate, which talks about, the laws of safety and laws of consideration and fire safety and all these things. It gets very contemporary here as well.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Lopatin, for kicking us off here. And I'm enjoying reading all of your comments. There are some of you who are in professions very different than my own, who have unique perspectives on this tractate. So sometimes I read the comments and sometimes I put people on the spot by asking them to unmute when they aren't expecting it. So Michael Stock, I've just done that to you. Are you here? You said you spent 30 years as a Wall Street analyst and had a particularly unique perspective on the tractate. Can you come talk to us about it for a minute?
Sure. These three volumes so related to me. There was unlike all the other volumes where I had questions and issues. The format was very much like my MBA program. Which is all case histories. I particularly worked for Standard & Poor's. Standard & Poor's, all the interest rates that you, not all, but most of the interest rates that you either receive or get, come from the major rating agencies. So the whole second tractate, that was what, Bava Batra, right? Which talked about ribis. That was my life. interest rates. So it was very, very relevant to me. And what I found as someone who was very involved in in the the big financial meltdown in 2007, 2008, which was all about subprime lending and what have you. The rabbis were so concerned about was so concerned about the fairness and the socioeconomics and making sure the poor weren't being taken advantage of. On the other hand, the creditor needed to be incentivized, but how do you protect the borrower? All of that was my life for decades. So it was very relevant to me.
Mhm. Was it surprising to you that this was as sophisticated as it was thousands of years
Now,
ago?
yes, how sophisticated it was blew my mind. Truly blew my mind.
Thank you for sharing, Michael. I'm going to bring Karen on too, because she had a similar comment. Karen worked on matching borrowers and lenders for many, it still does. I'm sorry, still does. Karen, you want to tell
Sure,
us?
yeah. So I work
You
for a
shared this
company.
with non-Jewish colleagues. What were their reactions?
They were shocked, actually. They were like, "How old is this document?" And so I said, "Well, it's a development," but I sort of gave a little basic history of Mishnah to Talmud, and they were quite surprised with the depth and with the subject matter, and also with the marriage of ethics to business. So it was an interesting thing to bring up around the conference table when we probably should have been talking about work, but it was a good thing, I think, to bring up.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, there are some good questions about inheritance. Rabbi Lopatin, maybe you can peek at them in the in the comments. But to keep us on track, we're going to move on to our next presentation. Rabbi Goldberg, also from the 9th parak, the 9th chapter.
Also from the 9th chapter. A little introduction before we go to the text. Partly because it's the round number, right? About 1,800 pages in. Maybe because we're finishing all the babas, as they're called sometimes. Maybe because we're a few weeks away from 5 years in the Daf Yomi cycle. And maybe because I'm also right now I'm teaching a class in my shul where I'm a member about perspectives from 5 years at Daf Yomi. I've been thinking a lot about what are we doing here? What's this about? What's stuck with me? What's been meaningful to me about this whole journey? That's just amazing, to be this far along on it. So I'm starting with a question for all of you. Maybe I'll throw an answer into the chat. The Talmud is a amalgamation of two different works, right? Karen hinted at this in her synopsis of what the history she gave to her folks at work, right? We have the Mishnah, and we have the Gemara in conversation with each other. The question I have for you is, which sections give you the most joy? When you turn the page and say, "Oh, there's a new Mishnah! I'm so excited! A new Mishnah!" Is that what gives you joy, or do you get joy from your reading when you land on here's like a good piece of Gemara? What do you think? Let's see. Take a minute, throw some answers into the chat. I'm curious.
That's a good question. I also like it when they jump from legal into a good story. I find I wake up when that happens. Yep.
You have some friends with the stories.
Yeah.
I like Betsy says, I like it when I actually understand what's going on. That's always good. I like that.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
we'll see your answers coming through. Gemara with good Agadah, lots of stories. Sanhedrin comes with there's lots of good, we're coming. That's next week. I don't want to foreshadow, it's like next week, but there's lots of good storytelling. So a quick story from some of my students, and I'm staring right at a mom of one of these students on the part of this class from a lifetime ago, but I won't out anybody. When I was a high school Talmud teacher, most of my students would celebrate the part of our study when we were focused on the Mishnah. And most of them would say, I love studying the Mishnah. The language is clear. It presents some new ideas. You have to learn what those are, but then there's a position or two, and it's this wonderful time. Like, it's so straightforward. And then we get into the Gemara, and it's like a headache. I can't keep track of the arguments, going back, and it's really hard. So that's one sort of approach that a majority of my students take. But one day I walked into class, and two of my students, Richard and Shai, cornered me, and they said, when are we going to be done with this Mishnah part that we've been studying? Because like I want to get to the Gemara part. Like, so that's so interesting, guys. That's the opposite of what all your classmates have been telling me, that they love this part of the unit that we're looking at the Mishnah. Why do why do you have a unique opinion here? Why do you think? And they said, well, yeah, the Mishnah, sure, the language is easier. It's in Hebrew. We can access it more, but every time we look at it, we discover it's not always clear what we're supposed to do. We read more as we study the Mishnah. We see what's there, but we also see what's not there. There are all these questions that come up that there's not a definitive answer for. And when we turn to the Gemara, sure, we have to rack our brains on the logic of the Talmud and the rhetoric going back and forth. But once you can understand the rabbis' path through their analysis of the Mishnah that they do in the Gemara, there's something solid about it. It's harder maybe initially to jump into the Gemara, but at the end you can draw some conclusions which you can't always draw from the Mishnah, and that's why we want to be done with this Mishnah part and get to the Gemara part. So two different perspectives from two different groups of students. I don't think there's necessarily a right and wrong. The same way I'm loving these answers that are coming in about what you guys think about these two different genres. So in the middle of the 9th parak of Bava Batra, the rabbis reflect a little bit upon which of the genres that make up the Talmud do they prefer, sort of. And I'm gonna share my screen so you can see the text I'm referring to. And this is the text I wanted to bring.
Thanks, Rabbi Goldberg. Can you drop a link in the chat as well for folks who want to open it on a different window?
Yes, I can. Hang on. Done. It's in the chat. Awesome. Oh, there we go. Wait, I think I just advanced to, okay. Gotcha. All right. So, of course, there's a biblical verse and some midrash here. Rabbi Zera says that Rav says, what's the meaning of that which is written in Proverbs 15:15? All the days of the poor are terrible, and for the good-hearted it is always a feast. So this is a verse from Proverbs. There are lots of different ways you could explain it, but this is what Rabbi Zera tells us that Rav says. All the days of the poor are terrible. He says this is referring to the masters of Talmud. Who are the poor? The masters of Talmud, and their days are terrible. And for the good-hearted, it's always a feast. This is referring to the masters of Mishnah. Such an interesting perspective, like my first group of the majority of my former students, right? Where's the feast? Where's the joy? It's when we study and learn Mishnah. Mishnah is a feast, maybe because it's more straightforward. Maybe in Rav's day, when there were actually people's profession, it was to memorize the Mishnah and to know it by heart. They had a clear task for which there was always a festive meal to digest. I have to learn this material, I have to internalize it, and then I just have to come and recite it. The feast, says Rav, comes with the learning, the study, the knowledge of Mishnah, and that those who are on the Talmud side, which here is more the conversations about the Mishnah, what we would call Gemara, that's the part that's terrible, right? The ins and outs, the questions and answers, the dialectic, the back and forth. There's a suffering in terms of the working through all of that material that's in the Talmud. An interesting perspective from this verse that Rav says, right? There's more joy. It's like a festive meal studying Mishnah, and there's some suffering those who are the experts in the taking apart the Mishnah, figuring out what it means, and like all this content, reading these past 1,800 pages or so. So that's perspective number one. But of course, sorry, I have a window blocking this at the last line at the bottom. I gotta move it. Rava says the opposite is true. Not a surprise if you've been with us on this Daf Yomi journey. And Rava's position is consistent with teaching that Rav Maharshai says in the name of Rava. He's got a different verse. What's the meaning of that which is written? One who quarries stone shall be hurt by them. One that chops wood shall be warmed by them. Ecclesiastes 10:9. What's happening here? If you quarry stones, you'll be hurt by them. These are the masters of the Mishnah. And if you chop wood, you're going to be warmed by them, thereby by them, either way. These are the masters of the Talmud. What does this mean? Right, the act of studying Mishnah, learning it by heart, knowing what it is, you're carrying around these big, huge stones that you dig out of the quarry, and you just carry them around, and you don't benefit from them in any way. But it's the back and forth of the discussions of the Talmud, of the Gemara, that are like chopping wood, because the fruits of that labor, when you go back and forth in the ins and the outs, and you take the wood that you've chopped, so to speak, and put it in your fireplace, it gives you warmth as opposed to just like some big boulder sitting in your backyard that, like, you drop on your foot or it stubs your toes. So different verse, different metaphors, but Rava here says quite the opposite. The burden is carried by those who have to study Mishnah. They just get the beginning of the story. They just spend all this time memorizing these texts. And it's really, the warmth comes not from the Mishnah, but from the ways in which all those shards of wood that are chopped up in the Gemara that we bring with us at the end of the story, and we bring into our homes, and it warms us. I love these. Hang on, I'm going to come back to you, stopping to share. So I love first that this discussion of the Gemara uses good midrashic principles. Let's find verses that could be describing a whole bunch of different things and use it to apply to our craft. I love the fact that both positions, those who think Mishnah is where it's at, and those who think Gemara is where it's at, are mentioned. And I think that gives for also the diversity, like we have the diversity of opinions that I saw in the chat. Some of us like the clarity of Mishnah, straightforward language. It lays out, here's the situation, here's possibility A, here's possibility B. Every once in a while, there's a story. And some people say, Mishnah, that's just the start. It's the shakla and tarya, the back and forth of the Gemara, and that's what gets my juices flowing and warms me up to it. And even not the debate in this source, but what I saw in your discussion in the chat, right? Some of you choose between legal passages, narrative passages, right? We heard before, some people were excited for the Bavas because, oh my God, this is what I do at work. And that other stuff we did in those other Masechtot don't apply at all to my profession. And finally, I found my place in the Talmud. There are lots of ways to sort what's going to be meaningful here and what's not, which makes sense for any endeavor that takes 7.5 years to complete. My guess is you're going to enjoy some parts and not others. Just know, if you like Mishnah better, you like Gemara better, you have company in the rabbinic community as well. And I hope that both find ways to be not the heavy boulder that you have to carry around, but both provide you wood that you could put in your fireplace and it could sustain you and give you warmth, so that this journey is a pleasant one and not a burden. And with that, I say goodbye to this Masachet and send it back to Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was lovely to read all of your comments and the different ways that the texts resonate with you, and the different layers of the text resonate with you, and the different ideas in the text, and the different subject matters, and the different genres that we find in these texts. All such an interesting mix, making it really a very interesting thing to study. We're going to go ahead and move on now to Rabbanit Dasi Fruchter, who is also in the 9th parak, but with yet another body of material for us to consider together.
Thank you, Rachel. I am every time amazed. There's still almost 200 people in this room, so many years into this process. So really, yashar koach to everybody for your learning.
And by the way, Rabbi Fruchter, I haven't checked the number, but you should know there are over 30,000 people receiving the emails every day.
That's
So the
incredible.
people who show up in person for this is actually a small subset of the worldwide community that is plugged in. And of course, people who are learning Daf Yomi with us are just a small subset of the worldwide community of people studying Daf Yomi. So it really is quite an amazing network.
Wow. Can't wait for the Siyyum Hashas, whatever that looks like, whenever that happens. So one thing that I really loved about Bava Basra is that it got really realistic around families and people and money. If anyone has a family in this room, they know that sometimes at moments of death, tensions get high around how to divide property, how to understand the division of property, and things start to feel a little strange when it comes to dividing wealth and figuring out what to do with assets. What's so cool about Bava Basra, and one thing I'm walking away with, is okay, well, human beings are human beings around sometimes a mindset of feeling anxious around their families and around money. So what are some things we can take away from the wisdom of Chazal on this question? I want to focus in, I'm on Daf 144, Daf Kuf Mem Daled, actually right before the Mishnah that I'm going to bring. There's an amazing little statement about how cold air is the worst thing in the world, and you got to guard your soul against cold air. And yes, I did imagine a bubby being like, put on your coat at that moment. Anyhow, but the Mishnah that follows that little statement is about this thing called groomsmen's gifts. Raise your hand if you remember this section. Daf 144, groomsmen's gifts. Good. So what is happening in this Mishnah is it is related to the discussion of how to divide a father's estate among a number of siblings and brothers in this case. Now, there was this thing called performing as a groomsman, which back in that time meant by celebrating and contributing to the wedding feast of a friend's child, you would basically be owed the same by that friend. It would be an obligation for that person who you performed as a groomsman at their wedding to pay it back to you. And we're sitting here with our little etiquette hats and we're saying, that's so uncouth. You know, you go ahead and you perform as a groomsman at someone's wedding. Maybe you expect an invitation, but as the Mishnah said, you don't treat it like a loan that's collectible in court. That is not the way of a civilized person. The truth is, it is the way of the Gemara to say that in certain circumstances, gifts are more like loans that you can ask for repayment of. And in the case of dancing at someone else's wedding, that is exactly how it functions. You basically get a credit to your account that that person will dance at your child's wedding and pay you in the future. The reason I think this is important and why I wanted to lift it up in our discussion is that perhaps you'll agree with me that the world right now, and in general always, needs more chesed in it, needs more kindness in it. There are many, many statements in Chazal that talk about the importance of chesed, of bringing kindness into the world. But sometimes it feels a little bit out of reach to rise above our own desires and to act in this godly way. Midrash teaches that the world actually is all chesed, right? God created the world with chesed, and the Torah is finished with chesed, and there's chesed in the middle. And I'm sitting here, Dasi Fruchter in Philadelphia, and I'm like, sometimes life is really hard, and chesed is hard to reach. And so even with all of that, Chazal reminds us, okay, you can't access chesed, no problem. You're still obligated to dance at your friend's wedding. Right. And here are the parameters for what that looks like. And here are the parameters for how to support society with reciprocal gifts if necessary. And in fact, there's less of a focus in halacha on receiving and giving gifts than there are around loans and repaying loans. With the gift holiday right around the corner, it's important to note that there is a custom in Jewish tradition around giving Hanukkah gelt, right? This idea of paying a little bit extra in tzedakah, or maybe giving money to the children for paying their Torah teachers. But there are all these halachic questions about Hanukkah gelt. Is this a violation of the idea that people should actually hate gifts or receiving gifts? And the answer is, one of the answers is that if the person giving the gift is benefiting from the act of giving, then that is actually an okay reason to receive the gift as well. If the person on the other hand is getting something from giving you that gift, then that is a wonderful reason to receive a gift. Now, just to conclude around this idea, I want to offer us, just as we enter another Masechta, which is all about courts, basically, and who is in a court and who serves as a judge, that these are the structures that allow chesed to feel possible, right? If you are not sure that someone's going to have your back, it's really hard to just rise above it all and be the only chesed giving person in the entire universe. But what a gift that we have the Bavas, the Bava Batras and the Kamas and the Metzias and the Sanhedrins. We know that the just society we're going to be looked out for, and that perhaps that will make a little bit more room for chesed. Now, as that Mishnah ends, it says, oh, fine, groomsmen's gifts, those are reciprocal. But if someone sends someone gifts of wine or oil, you are not able to go to court and say, I'm ready for my wine and oil to be reciprocated. Mipnei shehein gemilut chasadim. They are reckoned as acts of kindness, mere gifts of goodwill. And so here we go. The gift that the Gemara gives us here, or the Mishnah gives us here, is the delineation between kinds of kindness. The kind that we can assume reciprocal nature for, and the kind that are truly from our heart. And so when we wake up every day, we can say, all right, I'm doing at least one of those today. Which one am I doing? And then you can function in this way that will allow, God willing, to bring more chesed into the world. So I'll pause here. I know we're going to learn the last lines in a little bit, but Rachel, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Eric has a question for you. He says, weren't there professional groomsmen who were hired for weddings with no relationship to the family?
I think there, you might be maybe I'm incorrect, but you might be referring to like a badchan, which is like a jester. And those were professionally paid often. This word shushbinin or whatever it is, that was some sort of like loan that you gave by showing up at someone's wedding and contributing to the feast, which usually the person couldn't pay for on their own. Yeah.
And there are a lot of societies where this is kind of the wedding custom, including in Israel to some degree. Am I right about that? Maybe someone who's, I feel like a lot of places where the wedding, you, instead of showing up with a gift, you show up with a check, kind of, that helps cover the cost of the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Folks,
Yeah,
let me know
if
I've got that wrong. I feel like I've seen that done, including commonly in Israel. But this is the danger of having the microphone and not knowing for sure.
I mean, that's very interesting, though. What are the structures in which we kind of pitch in for communal events and are expected to pitch in for everybody's communal event, right?
Yeah. And of course, you know, the American wedding gifts are sort of supposed to be helping a young couple get on their feet. That's why there's like this tradition of giving kitchen supplies and things like that.
Registry.
Chinese weddings too. Yep. With red envelopes. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Okay. Well, it has been a heck of a tractate, folks, and a heck of a set of tractates. And it is really exciting to be wrapping them all up with you. I will take a moment now to say that it has been a long time since we met together, but it doesn't have to be as long until the next. It's a Catholic thing? I'm sorry, I'm distracted. Elizabeth says that's a Catholic thing. Okay. Tell me more in the comments. Now I've lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. It does not have to be as long until we get back together. We will be in Tractate Sanhedrin for about 4 or 5 months, but we are also coming up, as Rabbi Goldberg mentioned, on the 5th anniversary of Daf Yomi. So we actually have a special event planned for you that we haven't quite announced yet, but on January 5th, that's a Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, which is when those of us running this mostly are the times when most of us running this thing are in, though I realize all of you are not necessarily in that time zone. We are going to have a celebration of the last 5 years of Daf Yomi, about the 2/3 way mark. We're going to run through 23 tractates in about an hour. We have a wonderful panel of presenters, including these three folks, but lots of others, who are each given 3 minutes per tractate. Should be a fun, lighthearted, celebratory event. So please watch your emails for information about that, and we will look forward to doing that with you. But before we get there, let us turn the page on Bava Batra. So how did we decide that? I'm sorry, folks, I've got to pull up my notes. Who did we decide was going to read the last few lines? Rabbanit Fruchter, were you going to do those for us? You're going to take us through the end of the last page? Rabbanit Fruchter, come on. Oh.
Yeah.
She cannot unmute. Wait, I'm sorry.
Have to unmute. Yeah, we're not.
All right.
We're just like everybody else. We can't we got unless we stay unmuted.
There we go.
There you go. There we are. Sorry about that.
Everybody listen very carefully.
Amazing.
Read her lips.
There you go. Who's ready? Are we ready to complete Masechet Bava Batra? Let's go. Final lines. We are going to conclude the entire Masechta with a halachic ruling that begins v'hilchasa. This category of halacha refers to what's called an arev, a guarantor, someone who's going to guarantee a loan. What we learned is that a guarantor can obligate themselves for a loan that was already given with a special mode of acquisition. Like if the loan already exists, someone can pipe in and say, I'm going to guarantee that loan. All right. So Rabbi Goldberg, I'm going to borrow money from you. All right. But you know, Rabbi Lopatin knows I'm not really going to be good for it. So what he's going to do is say, you know, Rabbi Goldberg, I'm going to guarantee Dasi's loan. I got this. We're set. And I'm going to do a special mode of acquisition so I can serve as the guarantor for this loan. So the halacha is, Arev shebashas matan maos lo bai kinyan, a guarantor who commits himself at the time the money is given to the borrower, that's me, does not require a special kinyan to formalize the commitment. Achar matan maos, but if our loan, mine and Rabbi Goldberg's loan, has already happened, then by a kinyan. We need a special mode of acquisition to finalize this commitment. Most commonly, it's called a kinyan sudar, where Rabbi Lopatin has to raise a handkerchief or some other item belonging to me or a third party. That is a kinyan that is employed there. Finally, arev devestin lo by kinyan, a guarantor of the court. Rabbi Lopatin, if he's guaranteeing a whole court, he doesn't require a kinyan to formalize this, even if the loan already happened. Why is this? Because we all get a satisfaction from being a guarantor of the court. Like, we are so grateful that the court trusts us to guarantee a loan that gamar mushabidla. Someone can serve as a guarantor for the court without making an extra kinyan. Now, something that should echo in our minds as we finish this tractate, and also as we are kind of located in the Yosef story in the Torah reading cycle, is the source, the biblical source for arevut, for guarantors, comes from the story of Yosef. What happens? Well, we have a moment where the brothers guarantee Benjamin's return, right? Anochi Arvenu, I'm going to be the guarantor for his return. And as this final reminder, as we move into another tractate, being a guarantor is from the word to intermingle, arev, to be interconnected. Kol Yisrael arevim zebazeh. We're interconnected with one another. We step up and guarantee each other's loans. We feel each other's pain. We feel each other's joy. And what is a wonderful, beautiful thing is that because we're doing this project of Daf Yomi together, we feel each other more than many other Jews feel one another, right? We wake up and read the same words, and we feel that interconnected nature between us. So with that, we say, Hadran alach get pashut. We conclude the 10th chapter of Maseches Bava Batra and Uslika la Maseches Bava Batra. the whole tractate of Bava Batra. I'm a little verklempt, so I'm going to pass it on to Rabbi Goldberg for the Hadran.
Right. It's a great honor to be sitting among the disciples of Shimon ben Nanas, experts in these Masechtot, who we just read about. It's so fun to be part of this project, and I love when we get together for the Siyyum because I take away so much from what you guys have to teach, and I'm glad to represent the panel here with these traditional words that we say celebrating this milestone of Daf Yomi.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleague Amy, who is running the magic in the background, to go ahead and put those words on the screen for us as well.
Awesome.
So that those who are with
I'm
us.
going to read from my book, which has bigger font than my screen. I hope that will. So if I'm not looking at you, 200 people in the Zoom room, you'll get better pronunciation from me this way. Hadran alach masechet Bava Batra badrach alan, datan alach masechet Bava Batra v'datach alan, lo nidashe minach masechet Bava Batra v'lo tinashe minan, lo ba'alma hadem v'lo ba'alma da'ate. We are saying goodbye to Masechet Bava Batra, and we hope that we will return to it, and it will return to us in future years, maybe 6.5 years from now. Yhi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Avotenu, shetehei toratcha u'manotenu b'olam hazeh, v'tehei imanu le'olam haba. Chanina bar Papa, Rami bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Abba Mari bar Papa, Rafram bar Papa, Rachish bar Papa, Surcha bar Papa, Ara bar Papa, Darub bar Papa. May the words that we have studied from Torah and from Masechet Bava Batra be sweet in our mouths, and may they sustain us and our descendants. Harevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu v'pi amcha beYisrael v'niyeh anachnu v'tzatza'enu v'tzatza'ei tzatza'enu v'tzatza'ei amcha beYisrael kulanu yodei shemecha lomdei Toratecha lishma mo'evai techakmeni mitzvotecha ki le'olam yehi libi tamim b'chukecha leman lo evosh Le'olam lo eshkach pikudecha kivam chayitani baruch ata Adonai lamdeinu chukecha amen 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 tzala va'ed. Modim anachnu lach Adonai Eloheinu v'le'avotenu shesamta chalkenu miyoshvei beit midrash. We thank God that we've had this opportunity to immerse ourselves in the study of Talmud. V'lo samta chalkenu miyoshvei koranot. Anachnu mashkimim v'hem mashkimim anu mashkimim ledivrei Torah v'hem mashkimim לדברים בטלים, אנחנו עמלים והם עמלים, אנו עמלים ומקבלים שכר והם עמלים ואינם מקבלים שכר, אנו רצים והם רצים, אנו רצים לחיי עולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת שנאמר, ואתה אלוהים תורידם לבאר שחת, אנשי דמים ומרמה לא יחצו ימיהם ואני אפתח בכך. יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני Elohai, Kishem Shazartani, L'Sayim Masechet Bava Batra, Ken Tazreini, Latchil Masachtot, Shfarim Acherim, L'Saymam. Just as we have been able to finish Bava Batra, may we please, God, have the opportunity to begin and complete other Masechtot and other courses of study. L'modu le'lamed, l'shmor lasot, u'lekayem, kol divrei Talmud Toratecha be'ava, u'schut kol atanaim v'amoraim v'talmidei chachamim, Yamod lanu lezarenu shelo temush Torah mipinu mipi zarenu lezera zarenu adolam ibitkaem banu behit alecha tanche otach uveshopecha tishmor alecha vechatzirata hi tishichecha kivi yirbu yamecha veyosifu lecha shnot chaim orach yamim beyaminav v'smola osher v'kavod Adonai oz le'mo yiten hayivarech.
Tetra Koach, everyone. This is, oh no. Put that back, please, Amy. I need that.
We need the Kaddish.
The Kaddish, this is it's a Kaddish de Rabbanan that blesses all those people who learn Torah. There we go. Thank you. Who learn Torah, all of you. Beautiful. And it's a special Kaddish de Rabbanan that's only done on a Siyyum, which adds the parts of hope and vision for the future. It talks about the rebuilding of Jerusalem and as a city of peace, as a city of connecting us to God and removing all the obstacles. It talks about the rebuilding of the temple, but it doesn't say Beit HaMikdash. It talks about beautiful dreams that we have for Jerusalem as a city of peace. Whatever, however we dream it, we think of a Beit HaMikdash, a temple. If we think of just peace, shared society, everything. I just want to mention that I was. Many people say you're not allowed to go up to the Temple Mount. Some people say you shouldn't go to the Temple Mount. I did go up to the Temple Mount, and I was there with a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old boy who did a Siyyum on, it was Tractate Sukkah, but did a Siyyum and said this Kaddish right in front of the beautiful Dome of the Rock. And I really felt that there is a future for us together, shared society, being inspired by the beauty of even different religions. And that was my interpretation of this incredible Kaddish, an incredible moment that we really, when we learn the beautiful morals of Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Batra, we think about a more perfect society, one where everyone cares for each other and knows how to live with each other. Bava Batra is really, how do we live with each other so that we don't harm each other? So that was my inspiration from this Kaddish that was said on the Temple Mount. And now we'll say it here with all of you that have been so incredible in learning and in building a better future for our world through the Torah we're learning. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei rabah be'alamad yuhati lidcharato lachaya meitayo asaka yaton lachayal malamivnei Karta di Yerushalayim, build the city of Jerusalem. Uleshach lelahi chalei b'gava ulmeacher pulchana nuchra min aro latava pulchana di shemai el atre v'yamlich kuchabrichu v'alchutei v'karei b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'alam ulamei amaya Yibarach v'ishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnasei Vidadar vidalev vidalal shmei dekudisha barichu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush berchata v'nechamata damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Now comes the part, it's not in this text, but this is for blessing all those who learn Torah. Al Yisrael v'Rabbanan v'al Talmidei Hon v'al Kol Talmidei Hon v'al Kol Man Daskin Be'oraita Torah V'Batra Hadein v'Dibachol Atar v'Atar in any place. Yehi lahon lahon shlama rabba china v'chisa v'rachamei v'chayei arichem mazonei revichei for kanamin kodam ahon v'shmaya v'ara v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. O se shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. And certainly some will add V'al kol haolam and the whole world, and let us say Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for bringing us that beautiful conclusion of Tractate Bava Batra, and Rabbanit Fruchter for connecting it back to the Torah portion and to Torah. This has been like one of these tractates where we're not as grounded in Torah. So much of it doesn't come from Torah, which makes it all another interesting exercise. We move forward tomorrow with Tractate Sanhedrin. About large courts. A Sanhedrin is a court of 23, or in the case of a great Sanhedrin, 71 people, which try the really serious cases, many of them in when the consequence is capital punishment. So there's a lot of interesting material to come. We hope you will join us on January 5th to celebrate 5 years of Daf Yomi. More information will be coming out about that. I've already gotten some private messages about the timing. The problem of a global community is it's very hard to pick a time for an event that works for everybody. Like everything we do, including this Siyyum, it will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, My Jewish Learning on YouTube. And we will send links out at the bottom of emails. But if you ever are having trouble finding something, you can, of course, email us at our inbox, which is community@myjewishlearning.com. Thank you, everybody, for coming together to celebrate this. Thank you to our wonderful teachers who make this such a rich event. Thank you to all of you for your insightful comments and questions. And we will see you in your inbox tomorrow morning for Tractate Sanhedrin. And Shabbat Shalom, Chag Chanukah Sameach, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Mazel tov.
Lots of everybody.